Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Code Podcast series. This is Shankar. I am going to be the host for today's episode. I'm the founder CEO of Code. We regularly discuss with various tech leaders in understanding how they build their tech team globally, as well as even their workflows. In the ever-changing technology field, right? And today we have a special guest with us, Mr. Rohit Kaila, who is the in a way founder of wayfair GCC in India, if I call it. He's the first employee of wayfair, and from there he built a stellar team, and now he has grown closely around 700 member team. Probably Rohit will give the details. And before joining to wayfair, he worked with companies like Walmart, and before that with Intuit. So he had a global view of how the technology works from multiple industries, right, and having global sense. And he's a great team player. He always believes in empowering the team members in performing their best, right? That is very clear from the way he's scaling the team. So I'm going to have pleasure in interacting with Rohit in understanding how he looks at the GCCs and how the GCCs are adding value not just to their headquarters but to their customers, to their partners, and the whole ecosystem abroad. So welcome Rohit to our podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be here.
Yeah, yeah. So thanks, Rohit. So I made a very brief, introduction about you, Rohit, but our audience would really love to, hear about you, your background, as well as what you have done, and what is your vision, especially on the, wayfare of it, Rohit.
Sure, I've been in the industry for a little bit. I spent a bunch of my time after I had my education from India and then in the US, and spent a bunch of time in the US setting up and working with organizations in India, and then eventually I moved back to India to Bengaluru, and then I've done a bunch of startups in my career, done a bunch of big companies in my career, worked for some iconic names like Bell Labs, and worked for some Fortune 1 companies like Walmart, and some really exciting companies like Yahoo in its heydays. So been there, done a bunch of stuff. It's always been exciting to do something new and different. I've spanned a bunch of different domains, from internet to distributed systems to telecom to retail, and Wayfair has been a really exciting aspect in terms of coming here and setting up something from scratch for an organization that did not have any presence in India. For us to be able to go build the organization from scratch, build a really effective GCC. I mean, our goals are very clear in terms of what we wanted to do here. So we've probably done in last 2.5, 3 years, probably what most GCCs take many, many more years, largely because we've been very focused on what we wanted to do in India. So we have a very strong presence here. We are almost a third of the entire tech org now in India, and creating really great value for Wayfair and our customers.
Oh, that's a great, setting the momentum, Rohit. But could you tell a little more about what Wafer GCC does in India in terms of kind of functionalities and kind of some cutting edge products? I'm sure we would like to listen from you, Rohit.
Sure. I think one of the things that we set out as a goal at Wayfair when we are setting up India TDC is that we have a bunch of technology development centers across different locations for Wayfair. And what we wanted to do was we wanted to make sure that we set up a development center here, a TDC, which is at par with every other technology development center. So it was not treated as India as a separate center. We'll figure out what we want to do for India. It is about a technology development center, the largest one outside of our headquarters in Boston. That was our goal. And then build it as a very effective TDC. So many times people ask me, what do you do specifically for India for TDC? We actually don't do anything specifically for India for TDC. What we really do is because we are a third of the organization, so we have to carry a third of the load of the company. And the TDC is a reflection of the entire technology organization that is there at Wayfair. So we did not open the TDC with only one area to say, okay, we'll do supply chain, or we'll do this, or we'll do that. We actually built a TDC that's horizontally cut across the entire technology development organization, all domains, or areas within the TDC are represented in India, and all of them are in roughly the same range, about between 30 to 40% in some sense, right? So essentially, it's a very critical center because we look at it, we are about the way I look at it, we are about a $12 billion revenue company. So I'm assuming that one third of that $12 billion is attributable to the work that we do. In many ways, it's not exactly how it works, but really that's how I want people to think about it, right? Because we are very, very critical to every single thing that Wayfair does on the technology roadmap. We are a tech-only center. We have no business interests in India, so we are not in operations or business processes or any of those. It's a very front and center technology organization.
Got it, Rohit. I think just to discuss about Wayfair, right? I think Wayfair, though, so internally, whether it's a retail company or is it a what is a furniture company by DNA, Rohit? Because it has a heavy aspect, right? It's not just selling other people's product because you have your own brand, your own product, right? So how much of effort on the technology goes towards the trading aspect or the retailing aspect of it, and how much amount of effort goes on the non-retail or quality of furniture, especially you are also manufacturing through third parties, Rohit.
Yeah, so we actually we are not a company that either builds or even has an inventory of furniture. Our inventory is very, very low. We are largely from that aspect, a pure play retailer, right? And e-tailer at that. We of course also have entered physical retail, so we have some really great successes there. But at the same time, we are a pure retailer from that aspect of it. Now, what we've done though is we've created brands on top and curated brands on top of the furniture. So it's like Wayfair branded stuff will not necessarily be manufactured by Wayfair, not built by Wayfair. It's still by the suppliers, but we actually put that together in a way in which it creates sense for the customer. So for example, our highest end brand is Perigold, right? So that's really, expensive furniture, expensive home goods segment that is out there. That is a curated set of suppliers that essentially sell at that level. But the model remains the same. It's really the suppliers who are selling to the customers, and we are more the people who are actually making that happen. So we actually do not buy inventory and store inventory and then ship it to customers or manufacture or anything like that. But we are very critical in the value chain of the entire process, whether it is supply chain, whether it is actually home delivery, white glove, home services, everything else, whether it is the question of customer service, whether it is the question of actually having the right set of suppliers in terms of what we do, curating the products, creating super brands out of it. All of those value additions, Wayfair plays a very critical role in. And recently, we started what we call as Verified by Wayfair, in which we play a role in making sure that we verify a set of products, their quality, their ability to do things that they are doing, and then make sure the customers get the right this thing. So when we have a Verified by Wayfair stamp, we want to make sure that the customers understand that is something that we have played a very critical role in. So if you look at it, we do a value addition through the entire sort of the journey of what is happening between the supplier and the customer. Now, from a technology perspective, we are a tech-forward company. Almost everything that we do is very, very critically rooted in technology. So if you look at supply chain, for example, we are probably amongst the world's largest and best large parcel supply chain company that we can actually ship on blue waters. We have Castlegate product where we can actually ship on blue waters, host it, and actually deliver it to the customers, right? Whether you look at our centers where we actually distribute from, right? So those centers, how do we host, what kind of products, how many of them we host closer to the customer so that we can actually do a great delivery. Whether you look at home services where we offer ability for people to come in and actually build out the furniture for you so that it feels like as if you just bought it fresh, whether it means things like white glove delivery. So each of those aspects has a very strong technology base for it. And of course, then the customer experience itself, right, which is evolving in the world of GenAI, is evolving completely. where I think we are very deeply involved in making sure that the experience of buying is really great. And then when you extend it to physical retail, we are doing the whole same set of stuff on the physical retail side to make sure people have the best experience. So tech becomes front and center of virtually everything that we touch in this entire life cycle.
I completely agree, Rohit. Very important, right? And especially the retail, whenever there is a disruption, probably retail is in the center, right? Be it tariff or be it geopolitical tension or even COVID. I think one of the most hit area is retail, right? So you, as a leader, has always to be nimble and agile in terms of, hey, I think whatever you see today may not happen tomorrow, right? So how do you really prepare yourself in this kind of scenario when it comes to team building or in terms of technology, right? Because things changes, especially when thanks again to the AI, right? So how do you go about it, Rohit, in all these aspects, whatever you talked about?
See, I mean, since we are dealing lot of the stuff from the technology perspective, I would say two or three very critical things on that front. Number one, we are always in the game of talent, right? So we focus a lot on making sure we are able to assemble the best talent that is out there. And that if you assemble the best talent, chances are you'll build the best company, right? And I think that is what we heavily focus on. I think the second aspect is we focus very heavily on building the right culture within the organization for us to be able to do that. Once you're able to bring the talent, is the talent able to do the best work of their life within the company is very important. So we have we are a founder-led company, so we have very, very critical focus on operating like a startup. So where we look at ourselves and we distinguish compared to other companies is that we believe we bring the best of the world of the startup, best world of a large company. Large company because we have $12 billion in revenue. We have very clear idea of what we are trying to do. We have a very stable business case of what we are trying to do. We have very clear objectives of what we want to achieve in the coming years. So very, very stable business perspective of what we want to do. But the heart is that of a startup, right? To make sure that we operate in a way in which we are very nimble. We want to make sure that we make very quick changes, especially in technology front where landscape changes every few years. We want to make sure that we are the best in being the technologists in the company that is out there. So if we combine the aspect of a startup and a large company, we believe that is the sweet spot that Wayfair brings. And that a lot of people who come work here do that. A lot of people who are sort of, unhappy with the startup world where every day their life is changing every day. We don't know where the money is coming from. We don't know, what is happening. Some people get giddy with that over time. And we attract a lot of those people to come here to say, I don't want to lose my startup tinge, but I still want to work in a big company with a more stable business opportunity. Then there are people who work in these large companies where bureaucracy takes over the company in some sense. They have great companies, but at the same time, the speed at which they move is so slow. But they don't want to go to a startup. So they come here to say, oh, okay, the best of both worlds. So I think that's the second part of the whole thing. And I think the last thing is that geopolitics will change, the world of economics will change, the world of tariffs, everything else will change. But if you run a really efficient, good company, you will succeed, no matter which operating model you are in. So we focus a lot on making sure we are a very, very efficiently run company to make sure that all the principles are applied very well, and that sort of insulates us against all these changes that happen over time.
Sure, Rohit. Just again going back to the Wayfair starting the GCC here in India, right? I think Wayfair started in the year, I think the first few years of 2000, right? I think that is right. And despite of it's a Indian founder, the GCC started very recently, right? 3 years ago. So what made them to start the GCC now, not earlier, right? So is there anything significantly changing at the ground for the GCCs, Rohit? I think you worked earlier in Walmart and Intuit and in other places. So what do you see? And you also see in the US, right? So what has really changed now? Why now?
I think few aspects of it. I think Wayfair traditionally had centers in areas where they had business interests in, right? So our business interests were largely North America. We also had a business in Germany for some period of time, so we had a center there, and we had a bunch of centers within the US. But what happened is that post-COVID, we realized that the change of technology landscape was becoming very, very fast. We were moving towards, at that time, in 2022, when we started the center, generative AI had still not become a thing. but cloud was very important. We are doing a very strong technology transformation, and we needed really great technologists who would be able to scale, right? Who just did not have just the domain expertise, but also had the technology expertise of what we wanted to do. So the tech for us was changing in a big way. Excuse me. We were always a very core tech company, but the technology landscape was changing very fast, right? And then we looked around to say, okay, in this new technology landscape, where can we get beyond our headquarters? Where can we get scaled human resource and technologies for us to be able to fulfill the needs for the future of the company from a technology perspective? We have a small center in Bay Area, but as you know, for retailers going to Bay Area and the costs and the expenses and the ability to maintain a very large sort of workforce there is not very easy. Most retailers don't end up going because we are not like other companies where retailers are always one of the most frugal and best run companies, I would say. So in some sense, that was not working out for us. And then when we did, I mean, it's great. We have some of our best, senior talent actually comes from Bay Area, right? And a lot of our really great talent with great domain expertise comes from Boston. We have a center in Toronto as well. So we are looking at all of that, and we said, which is the place in the world where we can get really great technologists, really great domain expertise, really scaled manpower. And then, of course, India always comes to mind because almost every other company has a center here. And then we started looking at India. And then within India, we realized the bulk of the technology talent actually resides, especially in retail, resides within the Bengaluru area. So then we sort of came down to Bengaluru and said, this will probably be the best place for us to have a really scaled center. So, really great technologists at par with the best in the world. Really great, ability for us to attract those people and retain those people. Really great ecosystem in India for us to be able to hire and feed into the ecosystem and really scaled sort of center that we can build. And that's how India came into existence.
Very nice, Rohit. So, you're the first employee of Wayfair. From there, within matter of fact, 2.5 years, you scaled to more than 700. So, could you narrate the story of how did you start? How are your early peaks means? And now, if you look at it now, what do you expect from a new employee who is watching here, and if they want to join Wayfair, right? I think, what do they need to have Wayfair, Rohit?
Yeah, I think when we set that up, I think we were sometimes coming little late into the market in terms of setting up a center is not always a bad thing because you always learn from others' mistakes, right? In some sense, I think I have personally, my CTO, a lot of the other folks have personally been in this sort of model, and we've learned from each of the places we've been in. So as a result of which, we were very clear from day one what we wanted to do. Right.
Okay.
I think that clarity of purpose was very clear. It's not like, okay, let's hire 100 people in India and then we'll figure out what to do with them. Okay, let's do some back-end work and then we'll figure out what to do. Okay, let's do some supply chain work and then we'll figure out what we want to do. We are very clear of the nature and value of the center that we were trying to build, which was at par as a key technology development center for Wayfair. That goal was set up even before I joined, right? Or
Okay.
at least a discussion that I had before the time of joining to say, it'll make sense for me to come here and do this if that is the charter that we want to go as a company, right? And
Got
that
it.
was very clear, right? Of course, there are benefits that you get from a location, but beyond that, I think that goal was very critical. So if you look at it, we started actually hiring some of our leadership team even before we hired engineers. I always say this,
Okay.
18 people who joined Wayfair even before Wayfair was formally registered in India. We were actually not even Wayfair employees before because Wayfair entity didn't even exist. That was my first job to get the registration done, right? We were actually working through one of our partners who helped set it up, which is Zinov. So we were actually working with them, right? So we were technically working through them.
Fair
So
also.
out of the 18 people that we got, 4 people were from the leadership team, right? Senior most leadership team of Wayfair, even before we hired the engineers. And those 4 people in the senior leadership team still work with the company today, right? That was the clarity of purpose. So you hired the leaders, and these leaders spanned all the domains. We were very clear that we wanted to go across all domains. Of course, supply chain started first, but all domains really started. It was not like, only one, because whenever you build a retail technology, customer doesn't really care you're doing supply chain or you're doing customer service or you're doing supplier maintenance. The customer cares that you get the end-to-end experience. So we wanted to make sure that all domains are represented so that we can build and solve for the customer rather than trying to solve for just that particular piece of what we wanted to do. So we hired the leadership team first. We had clear goals of what we wanted to do, and then we started hiring the people under that. Because once you have the leadership in place, people realize that, oh my God, these great leaders are coming and working here, so they tend to come there more often, right? In terms of what it is. So I think that was our plan. It panned out really well. I think we are about 700, 750, somewhere around that sort of technologists and people within the organization. But we wanted to make sure we ramp up really fast and get everybody in, right? And really, the next phase, as you're asking about what is the key aspect, I think we are largely done with our core hiring in terms of what we wanted to do. And a lot of it now is to make sure that we move up the value chain. We have the right product leaders, we have the right set of design, we have everything else in there so that we can own large vertical pieces of what we end up doing. And that's really the evolution of the center as we look in the next few years.
Sure, right. Right. So moving on to the impact of GCC, right? I think in every forum we say that hey, we should go beyond the number of employees as a metric, right? You just a few minutes ago you mentioned saying that your India org structure mirrors the global org, right? But that in a way I would say belittling of your great effort, Rohit, right? Could you tell what is a real delivery? What is a thing what India GCC has really achieved within the 2 years, right? Beyond, hey, they are also doing, we are also sharing that, right? That's a one way of putting. But I would say, what is the value addition of GCC beyond the cost, right? Because the same thing can be done in US, it would have costed far more, but in India it would have cost less, right? But what else, Rohit?
Yeah, I think on the cost part of it, we were very clear right from the beginning that cost is a function of location, right?
Right.
It's an important but not the only driving force for us when we pick location. Like even if you look at US, right, between the East Coast and West Coast, the costs are very different,
Very different. Yeah.
right? But a lot of our senior leadership comes from the West Coast. So we've picked location based on what is the right aspect of it, and then the cost becomes an add-on to whatever location we pick in terms of where we want to go. So that is our perspective on that. In terms of what we are trying to do is to make sure that, like I said, collect the best technical people for doing the job under the sun in that location, right? And that's what we've really focused on, and that has led to great results. For example, a lot of, and then when we set up the center, what we realize is that there are functional areas that we end up owning here, right? Where
Okay.
the leader here will be the one who will work with business or all the stakeholders to make sure that we both look at what has to be done, design the roadmap, make sure we have the right set of people, and make sure we deliver that, right? Supply chain, one of the earlier areas, and one of the critical aspects that you do in supply chain, for example, is findability. Do you need to know where your particular shipment or a particular item of that is part of the shipment, where it is at that point of time? In that area, we are doing a very, very critical focus on making sure that we built that entire platform here. We didn't exist in its current form at Wayfair. We struggled a bit, and then the teams are set up here to own that entire piece. So today, that entire piece is owned here. So if you look at everything that is related to that, it's done here. Their roadmap, their product, their everything gets done out of here when they interact with the other teams in the US. Then you look at things like communication platforms. You have great communication platforms where you send out emails, you do a lot of that stuff. The entire aspect of communications platform is actually located here. You look at platform areas, there are a lot of stuff that we are doing in productivity, in terms of developer efficiency, in all of these areas. A lot of those areas are located here, right? Then you look at supply chain, for example, or you look at supplier, for example, which is a very critical element for us. So in the supplier side of it, catalog is probably the most important thing that is there in the company. A lot of the catalog transformation work is actually happening right now in out of the Bengaluru office. So if you look at it, we own those verticals, right? And there is a leader identified in terms of doing those verticals, and then we drive that aspect end to end from conceptualization to planning to delivery in terms of what we do. And over the last 2.5, 3 years that we've been here, we have amazing examples of delivery that we've been very critically part of from the center.
Oh, very nice, Rohit. I was, just before our podcast, I was talking to one of the, again, a retail GC's leader, right? So he was telling, hey, now, I think beyond the delivery, now he's saying that my role, one of my main KRA is like delivering this much of, directly, because he's also data AI leader, not a business leader per se, but his KRA primarily comes from this much of revenue from new areas. For example, the not subordinate revenue, right? That should become main, like, digital revenue now. So whether do you see that this is becoming a mainstream, Rohit, in terms of beyond delivery, right? Beyond the accuracy on time and various other things, the business outcome is also mandate of a GCCs.
Yeah, I mean, see, it becomes part and parcel of everything, right? Now, if I go back and say, you know, building, if you are, let's say we are doing something on in the aspect of supply chain, right? That has very critical business goals associated with it,
Okay.
right? When we go do that, we are responsible for that business goals. Now, Wayfair is not a company where, each of the technology areas own their own P&Ls to say, okay, this is the business I'm getting. We are not in that business, right? If we were we are in a retail business, it's slightly different, right? If we were actually
Okay.
doing, say, things like email services or something else, there'll be how much customers did you acquire? If you're a SaaS platform, how many customers? We are not in that business, right? So in
Okay.
our end, the business team really focuses on the business aspects of it. The technology organization fundamentally is driving that business from technology outcomes. So we are a technology company, right? What we are doing in India is a technology development center. It is not a business development center, right?
Got it.
And a lot of our business fundamentally is more closer to the market where we operate, and that's kind of how it works because we are a retailer. It's not online business that we are trying to do from a SaaS aspect of it. So as a result of it, a lot of the stuff that we do is basically driving business through technology transformation, and that is what we are responsible for. And doesn't matter, same leader could be sitting in California, could be sitting in Boston, could be sitting in Toronto, will be responsible for pretty much the same aspect of what we want to do.
Got it, Rohit. But probably, since it's a very interesting topic, I will probably one more question in the same area. If I can ask, if it's not very personal, when you talk to your leaders in the headquarters, how do they measure India GCC or even Rohit performance, right? What are the major KRAs they would be looking at? Will that be okay for you to share?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, see, my role is slightly different because of the fact that I am driving a lot more from a center and aspect of it. But I think the better question would be how would be the people who report into me, the leadership team at Wayfair in India can
Maybe,
be evaluated.
maybe, yeah.
It'll actually be exactly identical how a leadership team or the same individual in Boston or Bay Area will be evaluated, right?
Got it.
Because we have almost no distinction from a TDC perspective. You could be located anywhere, right? You could be a person leading. So, for example, let's say I have a leader who's leading catalog today, right? And that leader
Sure.
happens to be out of Bengaluru. Now, there will be teams driving catalog work sitting out of different locations. Could be some people in Bay Area, some of them in Toronto, some of them in California, in Boston, and a lot of them in India, right? For this person, so this person will really be driven by saying, what are the we have two cycles of planning. What is it that we plan, and how did you deliver against that plan? Now that person could be located anywhere, so we do not have any India specific aspect. My job might be a little bit of an anomaly because I have to be responsible for getting this center running, up and running, and doing all of this stuff. You probably don't have an equivalent of my job, for example, in Boston, because there's no center leader in Boston per se, because that's our headquarters, right? But I have that job. So mine will be slightly different. My KRAs will be more driven by the India center and everything else. But the leadership team, the technology leadership team that we have will be viewed identical no matter which location you are. So that's why while here we talk about GCCs and India and everything else, if you actually go within the center, you will not even know where the person is operating from. It's exactly evaluation is the same.
Oh, very nice. Beautiful. I think I clearly see this is a kind of theme or the mindset going across all the GCCs, right? So probably moving to the next topic, Rohit. I think I heard a lot of good things about, especially some of the employees from Wayfair. Is like the global visibility, right? I think the global team is regularly visiting and the kind of exposure, right? Uh, what makes you to give that kind of exposure? Kind of this one is it again? Is it Rohit's or is it the way the company thinks through it? And yeah, I'd like to get your opinion, Rohit.
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and I think it's again rooted in Wayfair philosophy in some sense. If you look at it, um, we are a third of the technology organization becomes a very critical aspect of it. So being part of this center and visiting becomes a very critical aspect for every single leader. So our CTO, for example, she visits here every quarter. I don't think there is a single quarter she has missed till date. Our CEO, even though technology is not the first thing that he's driving, but for him, this center is a very critical center in terms of what he's trying to do. As a result of which he comes here every year. I mean, we don't have business interests, and you'll expect the CEO to go up where most of the business interests lie. But the technology, because we're a tech-forward company, technology is very high on Neeraj Shah's viewpoint. And then our co-founder, Steve, they all have very, very clear vested interest in. So they come here every year, and they've been coming here, all the 3 years that we've full completed 3 years that we've had. Right. So as a result of which, it is very important for these leaders to be here because this is where a third of their outcome is located. So as a result of which, if you followed that aspect of it, it is very important for people to do. So I think Wayfair sets the principles, right? And the principles is that, these are the locations, this is what we are trying to do to make sure that you have the best outcome from it. And the leaders end up following that aspect of it. And a lot of it is role modeling. So Neeraj and Steve role model it from a founder CEO perspective. Fiona Mounders, role models it from a CTO perspective. And when you have very senior leaders in the company role modeling it, almost everybody follows that role model, and that's Wayfair culture too. So we had this time for example, we had our legal counsel who heads all of legal for Wayfair visited us, right? Now you would consider why would a legal person come here, but we do a lot of work on legal tech here. We actually have a legal person here because legal aspect becomes a very critical element of what we do in terms of things that we are trying to do. Because we have to sign all these contracts with suppliers and everything else. So he actually came here because he has a vested interest in the team that is out there. Our CFO visits here, even though we are not the company that is there on the finance side of it. So I think if you look at that aspect of it, it's really the role modeling of our very senior leaders that is then followed within the company. And it's just the Wayfair culture to be very open and sort of be connected to people.
I'm sure a lot of prospective employees should make a note of these, Rohit, when it comes to the global exposure.
I know
So,
that
yeah,
a lot of people come to me and say, "Oh, in my last company, I think I worked there for 5 years. I saw the CTO like once, right?
wow,
Or oh, I was there and I saw the CEO and never saw the CEO, right?
right.
That's not the Wayfair culture. If you go to Boston, you ask for time, Neeraj Shah will be the first person who will give you time, right? So that's just the Wayfair culture, and we've replicated it well here.
No, could completely, empathize, Rohit. I think because I'm many times I see a lot of young people, they saying that, they say that, hey, I'm looking for a job and, keep referring. And one of the things they say that I like to get exposure. So Wafer is really giving that global exposure. People can sit in India and really get the exposure through the leadership as well as even the kind of work, yeah, they're doing across the globe, Rohit. Very well, very well. Rohit, one more aspect of looking at the technology and other things, right? How do you decide, right? Because there are so many things. Again, probably in another aspect, how so many things are changing. So how do you define the GCC's architecture? Like you see some leaders are there. Now tomorrow you may do it legal, or the day after tomorrow you may do finance, right? So is it happening on the go, or you plan it well in advance a year and you prepare those leaders, because the business also, right? I think a few days ago we never thought about Venezuela something will happen, right? Whether it may not be relevant for Wayfair, but I'm just giving an example. So how do you decide the future course of action? Is it multi quarters in advance, or it happens on the go, Rohit?
Yeah, so Wayfair has very well laid out planning processes. We do twice a year. We do full planning in terms of what we end up doing, and then within the planning process, we always have tweaks that we make based on the situation that is there, right? And that process extends through the company. It is not GCC related. Like I said, we have GCCs in we have technology development centers in Bay Area, and of course headquarters in Boston, in Toronto, and in Bengaluru. So as a result of which, we already have people located in multiple locations, right? Also, we have a small presence in Seattle as well. So we are very clear about what each of these centers are doing, and our planning process comes in, and then this planning process works across all centers. It's not GCC specific, not India specific. It is company specific in terms of what it is. And Wayfair is very, very nimble, right? So we do this planning process, a couple of times a year, and then we adjust during the planning process in case there are things that come up that are very, very new, right? And then I think that process runs through the entire company without location, and it's very location agnostic in many ways.
Got it. Got it. So if, for example, if you want to do, for example, the finance function, right, it could happen even as it happened in the another couple of times you do the revision, it could happen as, within that time, right? Got it. Got it, Rohit. So I think coming to the global aspect of it, right? How does the GCC again impact on the roadmap or the planning as well as the headquarters, the larger areas, right? I think in terms of the profitability, I see one of the major areas what is being mentioned in some of these this one, right? Any specific emphasis or how does it happen, Rohit?
Again, I think the business aspect of it, we do not get into because that is, for example, profit margins, profitability at the largest level is largely controlled by the business, right? And very senior leadership team. So we don't get involved in it. But from a technology perspective, the roadmaps are global, right? So we get involved in all the planning in terms of what we end up doing. We focus a lot on efficiency, so which eventually leads to profitability, but efficiency is critical. So technology landscape is changing so fast. We become very critical part of, in fact, we give every single engineer access to generative AI tools to make sure that they efficiently work on it. In fact, we monitor how much they are doing, and every single location and every single team has the desire for us to be able to push up the efficiency for that. So we make that, and then based on the areas that we own here, we impact the roadmap in a very significant way. And then we drive that part of the roadmap. So if an area like catalog, let's say, is owned here, the roadmap for that will be owned by the leader here, right? And then that will define the roadmap for the entire cycle, and that will be driven from here. If an area is owned in the US, then the roadmap will be driven from the US, and then we will maybe have some part to play in that aspect of it. So there's a driver, and then there is the executors in terms of what we do, and that process runs across the company.
Got it, Rohit. Probably last couple of questions, right? Rohit, I think as we look out for the year 2026, what are the new projects or which are the new things which the GCC would like to achieve, right? And what kind of skill set you are looking at from the audience or even a broad audience, which is, and even what kind of number or the count you are looking for the Wayfair GCC in India, Rohit?
Yeah, I think from a count perspective, we are pretty much in a stable state. We've reached our goals of what we wanted to do here. So we are, we'll grow a little bit, but not more organic growth. I think we are pretty much at a stable state. I think a lot of our focus right now is on building capabilities, for example, on the product side, right? We are doing a lot. We are hiring more product people now. We brought in some senior product people as well to make sure that we have the right level of conversations, right, in terms of what we are doing. We're also bringing in some leaders as well because now we have a large team. So we want to make sure that our pyramid in terms of, senior leaders and ratios and everything else is much better in terms of what we end up doing. The other area we are very heavily focusing, of course, is on generative AI. How is it that we equip everybody else? Like I said, how do we make sure that we are doing really, really well in terms of efficiency, in terms of what we do? And this is such a changing landscape. We want to make sure that every single individual is equipped to make sure that we are able to do a really great job. And then, of course, there are individual areas that we own that are very critical. We are building a lot more focus on building a business connect, right? Because Wayfair is not that big a company. It's a small company. You directly go talk to business leaders and everything else. So we are getting to see a lot more business leaders actually now visit India and then get the organization here to understand the business context of what they are doing because it helps them define their roadmaps better and everything else. So if you look at it, I mean, bulk of the hiring is done, and I think moving up the value chain is really what we are focusing on right now, which is related to certain functions that we are building, which is related to certain ways of working that we are building, which is also related to certain domain expertise that we are actually gaining along the way in terms of what we do.
Sure, right. So do you primarily now look at very senior people into the Wayfair ecosystem, or do you also hire directly from colleges or freshers? And what do you expect the kind of skill set or a mindset, even more than the skill set? It's not a lot of everyone wears a yeah in their head. But what kind of mindset you expect them to carry, Rohit, especially working in a Fortune 500, a US Fortune 500 company?
See, we hire from campus every year. We are going to continue to hire from campus every year. So, we just onboarded our 6 month interns, and then we convert many of them. So our campus program is live and kicking. It will continue to remain what it is because there's always attrition backfills to fill everything else. So it's never going to go away, right? It's not like you hired and you'll never hire again, right? So it's a continuous process. We want to have continuous engagement with universities and we continue to hire that aspect of it. So bringing in fresh talent. Net new, we have some senior leaders that we are hiring in both product and engineering, which I think, we go to the market and get them. It's to make sure that our pyramid is properly organized in terms of what we end up doing. On the aspect of technology, again, like I said, we are very tech forward company. So generative AI becomes a very critical element for us. We do a lot of hackathons. We do a lot of stuff in which people come up with new ideas and we build them out. We want to make sure that every engineer is extremely efficient. So every engineer is given tools. We measure the productivity of engineers. We measure how much part. In fact, I was just talking to all our interns who are there in the company who actually were interns and then they got converted into FTEs in the company and asking them how much part of their code is written by generative AI tools versus writing it themselves. And they said majority of the code is now being written for them by generative AI, right? Which is really amazing. There are the set of people where maybe it's more difficult to have generative AI write code, but they're using it for other purposes. So I think all of those aspects we measure very, very carefully. And we'll continue to do that to build a really best efficient workforce that is up there.
Oh, great. Great to hear, Rohit, that you're hiring from campuses. There are more employment, Wayfair GCC. So do you also work with startups directly, Rohit, Wayfair as a company, in any form?
We do not work directly with startups here. We haven't had too much interaction with the local startup community. In the US, of course, we do end up talking to a bunch of startups, work with them. We have some external partners as well we work with, but we haven't started much of that here yet. It's more global control, yeah, still.
Okay, okay. And in the near future, also, you don't see any accelerator because some of the leading retail GCCs in India have a beautiful program of accelerators and all. So, do we see that in the near future, anything happening or?
See, accelerator program is a different aspect of it. Wayfair in general does not do accelerators as a company. We do
Okay.
not go and invest in other companies and bring them up and do that. We haven't really done that from an organization perspective. But we work very closely with partners, right, in terms of what we end up doing. And if we do find great partners to work with India, we will do that. I mean, there is nothing that prevents us from doing it. At the same time, we haven't yet found anybody we can very critically partner with right now to make it happen. But if it comes along the way, I'm sure we will do that.
Got it, Rohit. Got it. Got it. So it was fantastic talking to you, Rohit. Thanks a lot for answering patiently for all the questions, and looking forward to be in touch in future, Rohit. Thanks a lot.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thanks for hosting me. It was wonderful spending time and talking to you about this.
Yeah, thanks, Rohit.